Liza Bournet from Bookpage here at RWA in New York, talking to Lavinia Kent, who has several projects on the horizon right now. Lavinia writes historical romance, and I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about your October release, What a Duke Wants.
I love this book. This is, I think, my favorite of probably everything I've written, except maybe my novellas that I'll tell you about in a little bit. It's my fourth book, but it's sort of the end of a trilogy. Mm-hmm. My first book was about an older, experienced woman who got involved with a younger man who had to persuade her to marry mm-hmm. him. And then I wrote about the brother who was sort of mean in the first book, and it was the great challenge of turning a villain into a hero. The first thing I had to do was go back and rewrite the first book and make him be 6'2", so people wouldn't think he was short of balding. But these characters have a younger sister who may or may not have committed murder and then ran away. And nobody knew what had happened. For the brother's book, Master's book, the whole story is he's trying to find her and feels guilty about the things he did that drove her to do whatever she did. So finally I get to tell her story. Mm-hmm. People have been asking, the next one's Isabella's book, the next one's Isabella's book, and finally I get to do it. And I get to give her a Duke.
Mm-hmm. Well, why did you decide to write historical? What is attractive about this period?
I had actually intended to write medievals because I really like the dynamic of the strong, powerful man mm-hmm. and the woman who ends up in situations where she really can't, she has no choices. Mm-hmm. If you put the same thing in a modern context, you'd say she was a victim and she should take care of it. But in a historical context, women really, get married or starve, mm-hmm. Become a governess or starve. There were not a lot of choices. Mm-hmm. And once you were married, the man controlled everything. Mm-hmm. Then I ended up with a lot of friends who were writing regencies, and I just fell in love with the period, mm-hmm. with the clothes, with the manners, you have the Napoleonic Wars, but then if you get just after them, you still have men who are brave soldiers, mm-hmm. but they're not going to die.
Mm-hmm. Well, what sort of research do you do for your books to get the accuracies of the time?
I'd have to be honest that I'm on the research light side, but I work very, very hard not to get things wrong. Mm-hmm. At this point, I know the period pretty well. I have read a lot. I read a lot of history in high school and college. So I knew the general outlines, and then from reading a lot of other romance mostly, mm-hmm. I learned some about society and how it worked. But whenever I'm checking up on something, and in this book, my heroine starts out as a baby nurse, mm-hmm. because the woman didn't want to feed her own baby. But my heroine's not a wet nurse, so I had to learn about baby bottles, mm-hmm. which actually looked like a neti pot, if anybody knows what that is. They were long and had like a spout, and you put your thumb over a hole in the top to release liquid. So you would stick it in the baby's mouth and just lift your thumb to dribble into his mouth. And so I do a lot of that sort of research, of looking for the specific details that will make the period really come alive.
Mm-hmm. Well, can you tell me a little bit about Isabella and her Duke, kind of their chemistry, and how does it work? I love talking to romance authors about relationships. And
well, it starts out with, I think, the best line I've ever written, but people are going to have to read the book to find it out. But they're alone in an inn outside at night, where she's out walking the baby because she's been told that the Duke is in residence and he doesn't like noise. Mm-hmm. So they push her and the baby outside for her to walk him back and forth as he's crying. And the brand new Duke, he's only just inherited the title, is out there. And he doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know who he is. He at first thinks she's really seductive because she has this real wiggle to her walk because she's rocking the baby, but he doesn't see the baby. He just sees this woman, so he thinks she's a prostitute. That his men have found him a woman and sent him out. So they have this great misunderstanding and a lot of chemistry. And she's been talking about the Duke, and finally says, "Oh, you must be part of the Duke's party." And he's well, yes. But so they travel on to London, neither one knowing really who the other one is. I mean, he knows she's a baby nurse, but he doesn't know that she's run away from an aristocratic family and actually would be a suitable bride. Mm-hmm. And so when they find out who the other one is after an encounter, sensual encounter, they're both sort of shocked and upset because she'd been thinking that he was an estate manager or somebody who, would be suitable for her new life. And as a Duke, she has no hope. Plus, she doesn't want to go back to London and face up to what's happened there. Mm-hmm. And he'd been thinking she'd be a perfect mistress, but, now she's a member of the aristocracy, she's not really quite in the same league. So they each have to find their fit and then have a wonderful Cinderella moment.
Well, what about the Real Duchesses of London, your novellas that you mentioned earlier, which are coming out this summer?
Started this last Tuesday with Avon Impulse, which I think is the most exciting thing to happen for a while. I love reality TV. Don't like to admit it, but I love it.
What's your favorite show?
It's probably Real Housewives of New York. But I love Survivor, The Amazing Race. I mean, Survivor I didn't start the first season, but I love Survivor and the dynamics. And the changing dynamics where each year people know more about how the game works, so they have to play it completely differently. But then I started watching Real Housewives, sort of, that you turn the TV on and you don't really mean to watch something.
And then you get hooked.
And then you get hooked. And there's a 6-hour marathon, and it was just amazing. And I think it's actually the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills that really inspired this. These very wealthy women who, certainly have absolutely everything from the outside. And the idea of like looking inside their lives. And then I was also watching Downton Abbey and had loved Upstairs Downstairs when I was a child. I haven't watched the new one yet. So I got this idea of having the Duchesses and then also having like little segments of the maids who are watching them and looking at like political cartoons of them in the windows and gossiping about their lives, so that I could have this sort of whole viewer aspect like you do with reality television.
And these novellas are ebooks. They're
ebooks, yeah, they're digital only. There's some possibility, hopefully, that they'll package all 4 together and do it as print on demand at the end.
Okay.
Because I do have readers who are very upset that they're only ebooks.
Okay. Well, we've been having several conversations throughout this convention about how it seems like romance readers were early adopters of all of the digital technology, and a lot of romance readers, probably because they're such voracious readers, have had e-readers for a long time, and I wondered if you got that sense.
Oh, definitely. They had the Avon signing today. I was signing and giving away the cards, which has all the information about the Real Duchesses, and saying, oh, do you have an e-reader? Do you have an e-reader? And I think I gave away probably about 200 books, and only had one person who said no, they didn't. But they were getting one.
Well, we have to ask this. We're at RWA. What is your favorite love story?
My favorite love story? Oh, I have a couple. I love Galen Foley's The Duke. It doesn't have the most believable ending in the world, even for a romance, but there are just a couple of places in it that I'm just like, oh.
I want that gasp.
I want that gasp. There was an Elizabeth Lowell where a woman has a miscarriage, and I was just like, oh. I read a lot of them, J.R. Ward, Christian Feehan. I just love books. It's always, what I'm reading at the moment tends to be my favorite.
Well, finally, just kind of a fun question. If one of your characters was able to step off the page and come into the real world, who would you choose?
You have him right there.
Want to hold him for our readers?
Yes. This is my Duke. He swept me away. Mostly there's a scene about 3/4 of the way through the book where I knew what was supposed to happen. He was supposed to come and be an ass, basically. And instead, he just walked in and he did the perfect thing. And I had to restructure the book because of it. But I was just like, of course. And he just swept me away. I would be very happy to be stuck with him for a long time. I actually got Emma gave us T-shirts, so now I get to sleep with the Duke every night.
Oh. Well, our readers can look forward to picking up What a Duke Wants this October. And thank you so much, Lavinia, for talking to Book Page.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.